Welcome to another episode of the Parts Counter, your source for personalizing your Harley-Davidson motorcycle with Harley-Davidson's genuine motorcycle parts and accessories. I'm your host, Jordan Mastagni, Editor-in-Chief of Hot Bike. If you missed our last episode, our pal Danny Wilson at Motorwitch Industries installed some serious long-haul accessories on his 2024 Street Glide. In this episode, it's all about the Screamin Eagle performance components. So Danny, we're back, episode 2, Parts Counter. We're getting into kind of your wheelhouse, the performance parts.
Sure.
Screamin Eagle components.
Yep.
What are we gonna do today?
All right, so we're doing a stage 2 torque cam kit, which includes the cam, tappets, and adjustable push rods.
Right.
We've got a high flow air filter for it. We've got Screamin Eagle slip-on mufflers, and we've got the new Harley-Davidson Screamin Eagle tuner so that we can put an appropriate map in this that'll work with that cam.
So we'll compare what we gain over stock.
Yeah.
And then take it for a ride. And I'm excited to hear how it's gonna sound.
Yeah, the mufflers are gonna make a huge difference in the tone of the exhaust system.
So that sounds good. I'm excited to kind of get in here and see what you do, and we'll let you just kind of do the voodoo that you do.
So before I get into tearing this thing down and doing the job, I want to talk real briefly about general cam information that you may or may not know. So this kit is referred to as a torque cam. A torque cam still produces horsepower. A horsepower cam still produces torque. What we're referring to when we say a torque cam or a horsepower cam is that it will make more of what we say it is. So if it's a torque cam, it's going to produce more torque than horsepower, vice versa with the horsepower cam, right? And that's all dictated by valve timing. We're not going to get into the crazy specifics of valve timing because that can chew up a half day and turn into arguments with people and all kinds of fun stuff. So we're just going to talk about the basics of it. It has to do with when the valves open and close relative to before and after top or bottom dead center. So the valve timing will dictate whether the cam produces more torque or horsepower. Another cool thing about horsepower, it kind of doesn't exist. Horsepower wasn't even a term until the late 1700s. And a guy named James Watt, who was a Scottish inventor, was using the term horsepower to sell steam engines that he had designed. So he had kind of figured out how far a horse could pull a set amount of weight in a set amount of time and refer to that as 1 horsepower. Horsepower is actually not even measurable. I don't know if you knew that or not, but horsepower is the byproduct of an equation. We can measure torque. Torque is rotational force applied to an object. In this case, it's the drum on the dyno. So we measure that. Horsepower is torque multiplied by engine speed divided by 5,252. That ends up giving you the horsepower number. So horsepower almost in a way doesn't exist. It's just something that's a byproduct of torque. So when you're talking about a horsepower cam or a torque cam, now you understand both cams make both things. A torque cam is going to make more torque than horsepower. Horsepower cam is going to make more horsepower than torque. So one last thing about cams, you'll hear people talk about a bolt-in cam. This is considered a bolt-in cam. What makes it a bolt-in cam is that it will work with your stock valve springs. Valve springs have a limited amount of travel. If you put a cam that's too big for your stock valve spring, it'll do what's called a coil bind, which means the valve spring will collapse all the way till it's stacked on itself. And then at that point, obviously it can't move, but the cam keeps moving. And at that point you start bending stuff. So a bolt-in cam will work with your stock valve springs. If you get a cam that has more lift than your stock valve springs can accommodate, you're gonna have to go to a larger valve spring. I just wanted to cover a real quick tech tip here. This is a 2024. As you can see, the throttle body is clocked at an angle. On the earlier Milwaukee 8s, it was straight up and down. And what that did was put this plug right here down in the area where you're needing to cut the push rods out. If you're working on an earlier Milwaukee 8 where you have the throttle body that's straight up and down, there's 3 fasteners in here that hold the throttle body to the back half. If you remove this, it gives you full access to this area. With this being a 2024, I'm not going to do that. So now we're going to start pulling the collars on the push rod tubes, move the tube up, and we're going to cut these push rods out. So we're going to use bolt cutters. If you read the instructions that come with this kit, it tells you specifically to use bolt cutters. I've had bikes come in the shop where a customer did the job themselves and they used a reciprocating saw, which if you think about it, drops metal down into the engine, right? Not a good idea.
So now that you got the stock components out, tell us about the differences between the stock cam versus this new Screamin Eagle cam.
Okay, so earlier I had referenced, torque cams, horsepower cams. This is considered a torque cam. In the instruction sheet that comes with the cam, it gives you the details on all of the cam options that Screamin Eagle offers. The cam is in total control of how far the valve opens, how quickly it opens and closes, how long it stays open.
Yeah.
And as it relates to cam timing, when, before, after top dead center, bottom dead center, that all dictates the way it's going to behave. So the stock cam on this has a lift of 432 on the intake and a lift of 463 on the exhaust. This cam we're installing has a 511 lift on it.
Okay.
So we're opening the valve farther. The duration on this Screamin Eagle cam is more, so we're keeping it open longer.
Got it.
And then the timing of it is different, so we're going to build more torque than a stock cam, simply by the way we're opening the valves and when we're doing it and how long they stay open.
Gotcha. I think that helps explain things.
Yeah. We got the cam chest emptied out. The oil pump stays in. This is a gerotor style oil pump. These outside gears are your feed gears. Then there's a set of gears that are behind it that are the return gears. So the return gears are sucking all the oil out of the belly of the engine and returning it ultimately into the engine oil tank where it's going to run through the system again. Let's get the cam in it, put the plate back on it, get all the drive set up. We've got new lifters or tappets and then adjustable push rods, and it's going to be just get the exhaust back on it. We can get on the road.
Nice.
So we got the oil pump and the cam plate all set up. There's a specific pattern these need to be torqued in. The final spec on those is 90 to 120 inch-pounds. That's all settled now. There's a spacer here that goes behind the cam drive gear. That's in place. So now we're going to put these cam drive gears on. They have a timing mark on them. So you've got a dot to line up. And on the end of the cam, it's got a flat ground in it, and there's a corresponding flat into the gear. This has also a flat. This goes onto the pinion of the flywheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to cycle the engine over so that that flat is facing straight up. All right, so we've got our drive on here. The cam install kit that comes in this cam kit includes new bolts. If you look at your instruction sheets, it will explain to you that you want to run the bolts down to 15 foot-pounds, back them out, and then final torque them. So we're 24 foot-pounds on the one that's going into the pinion on the crank, and we are 34 foot-pounds on the one going onto the end of the cam. All right, so this is all torqued now. We can move on to installing the cam chain tensioner next. Then the cover's gonna go on. Then we'll move on to the lifters and the adjustable push rods. There's a cam sensor inside there. This is a cover, and that bolt slaves the cover and holds the sensor in place. This kit includes a set of Screamin Eagle tappets or lifters. Both words are appropriate. It's basically a hydraulic lifter. There's a wheel rolling on the cam here. Oil pressure builds up a cushion inside here, and it cushions the push rod as it pushes up against the rocker arms. When you get these, they come wrapped in paper. They have air in them, so you gotta get the air out of them. You can soak them overnight, which obviously doesn't require a tool. You can force bleed them through these holes with an oil gun, or you can put them in a vacuum bleeder, which is what I'm gonna do. So getting into the adjustable push rods, this kit provides you with a shorter tube. What that does is it gives you room to make your adjustment underneath. So you'll notice that it's flanged out there. To protect the O-ring you're going to install a washer that's included with the kit. This washer prevents the end of the spring right there from cutting the O-ring. This is a critical step when you're installing these Screamin Eagle adjustable push rods. And then when you're collapsed like that, you've got enough room underneath to do your work. Putting new O-rings in the heads and then we'll get started. All right, so we're gonna be installing our Screamin Eagle adjustable push rods now. We're gonna start on the rear cylinder. And the reason for that is that this cam is on base circle for the rear cylinder. We know that because it's timed, okay? You have to make your push rod adjustment on the base circle of the cam. What that means is that is when the valve is to be closed. That is the shortest point of the lobe of that cam. So the base circle is where you have to set the cam to make your push rod adjustments. Screamin Eagle push rods are intake and exhaust specific. There's also a witness mark lasered onto one of the flats so that you have a reference point. We're gonna adjust these out to 0 lash, meaning that the push rod has no up and down movement inside there. Typically that can be done by just getting it finger tight. Once we reach 0 lash, we're gonna spin it so that we can see this O that's laser etched in there. And we are going to lengthen the push rod 2.5 turns. One turn. Two turns, there's our witness mark. 3 flats, that's 2.5 turns from 0 lash. Now, with your third wrench, you are gonna lock that jam nut up against the top portion of the push rod. Because of the thread pitch of these Screamin Eagle push rods, 2.5 turns is actually 100 thousandths of distance that you've added to the length of the push rod.
Okay.
And that applies preload onto the lifter so that it's in the sweet spot of where it's gonna function correctly as far as cushioning, but it will still apply enough pressure when the cam lobe goes all the way up to open the valve without anything unloading.
Danny, it's been explained to me that it's usually a good idea to replace the lifters and the push rods sometimes when you're installing a new cam. Why?
Definitely. So every time you do a cam, you want to do lifters.
Yeah.
And the reasoning for that is that these parts are all hardened and they have coatings on them. So the lifter roller is constantly in contact with this and it's constantly in motion. So you're taking something that has 0 wear and putting an item with wear against it, it's going to prematurely wear the new item.
Thanks for explaining all of that.
Yeah, no problem, dude. We're on the home stretch now. We got to put the air box back on it. We've got the new Screamin Eagle air filter element that's going to go in there.
Yep.
We're going to reinstall our exhaust. We've got new slip-ons for it, and then we'll drop a map in it and put it on the dyno and see what we get. All right, so we're getting ready to install our Screamin Eagle Extreme Flow air filter element. As you can see, it's clearly a larger element. It's going to give you more surface area. It's going to give you more flow. Cleanable and serviceable, whereas this is a one-time use. So when these get dirty, you toss them. This, you can just keep cleaning and oiling.
All right, so last step, getting the mufflers.
We're right down to it. We're going to install these Screamin Eagle slip-on mufflers. It's going to give it some better exhaust flow, and it's going to get a little bit better tone. Be a little bit louder, but it's still compliant. So it's going to help make some power, and it'll sound better.
Yeah, dude, these things look very cool. I like the forged carbon fiber end caps, the titanium mufflers. Let's get these on and then put it on the dyno, yeah?
Yeah, let's get it.
So Danny, you got the pipes on. We're just about ready to put this bike on the dyno.
Yep.
This is the last piece to the puzzle, right?
That's it.
This is the Bluetooth communication interface for the new Street Tuner, correct?
Correct. So that is going to plug into the bike. So now on this new tuner, you download an app, and the app gives you the ability to put maps or tunes in the bike, and you can see some live data that's not available through your traditional gauges.
Got it.
Like the earlier Screamin Eagle Street Tuners, this is going to marry itself to one motorcycle, so you can't buy one of these and use it on all your bikes, right? You got to get one for every bike because this marries itself to your VIN number.
So just so I'm clear, the Street Tuner itself is software that is communicated to the bike via this Bluetooth communication interface.
Yeah, so this is gonna stay on the bike. You're gonna use your phone so that you can select the appropriate map,
Right.
stick it in the motorcycle. In the instruction sheet, there's a QR code that will take you to the appropriate Android or Apple download so you can put the app on your phone. I set it up where you've got throttle position, engine temp, manifold pressure, and intake air temp.
Awesome. So that's a wrap.
Yeah, we're all buttoned up.
We did it. We did 2 episodes.
Yes, sir.
Episode 1, we focused on the long haul accessories package.
Right.
Then, episode 2, this was kind of more your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
The Screamin Eagle performance components.
Yeah, so we did the stage 2, which was the torque cam.
Yep.
That kit included tappets, push rods, adjustable push rods with tubes. Then we had the tuner, and we had the high flow air cleaner, and then the slip-on muffler.
I really like the look of those titanium slip-on mufflers.
Carbon fiber encapsulated look nice. The finish on them is great.
Yeah.
Easy to install. They sound better than stock.
And I think we got a little bit of performance gains, did we not?
We did. When it came to the dyno, we did the before and after. We picked up 8 horsepower, just shy of 2 pounds of torque. But if you look at the graph, the curve is much more linear. So this thing is coming out of the hole significantly torqueier than it did stock. And it just kind of stays there. So though we only picked up what can be considered a small amount of torque, it's valuable because your torque curve on the dyno graph is pretty much just a tabletop. It's pulling the entire time.
Yeah, from when it comes on
Yeah.
to when it falls off, very linear.
Yeah, it comes out of the hole almost at peak torque and it just hangs out there the whole run. From a rider's perspective, it rides great and it pulls really hard on the lower end. So as far as the rideability goes, it's nice because you're pretty much in the power band all the time.
Okay, you also rode with your better half,
Yes.
Katie, your wife.
Yes.
How did she like these accessories, this backrest pad, having something to lean against?
She's never been on a bike with a tour pack because I'm not normally a tour pack kind of guy. She really liked the seat and having the tour pack, being able to lean back and somewhere to put your arms, she was into it.
Nice, nice. So we got some comfort, some performance,
Yes.
some looks. Would you say that's a win-win-win? Did we
Yeah,
check all the boxes?
Yeah, we did. We checked all the boxes.
All right.
Turned out great.
Well, dude, thank you
Thanks for
letting
coming
us
down.
pester you and spend some time here in Phoenix. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy your new accessorized Street Glide.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, always. Next time, we're gonna get into some new stuff for the Lowrider ST, so we'll see you at the parts counter.